So for this project, we're going to, it's a line design project. So we're going to be using wire as our line, and we're going to build a scaffolding of an object, and then we're going to cover that scaffolding with rice paper. This is a piece that I did kind of quickly to kind of test it out. So I'm going to actually, and was from memory of a pawn, so I'm actually going to use the pawn and make it look more like the actual piece. You guys will choose a toy item. That toy item could be a toy dinosaur, a stuffy. You're going to make it about 12 to 18 inches in size. Not a toy dinosaur. Or you could do a Matchbox car, Hot Wheels. I have some parts of spinal cord from a deer that you could borrow. Another stuffy. I have all sorts of chess pieces, a whole chess set here that you could choose from. So we're going to be using aluminum wire with a smaller, this is 17 gauge. That's just indication of how thick the wire is. And this is 28 gauge, which is a lot thinner. The bigger the number, the smaller the wire. We're going to be using the 28 gauge to help bind it together. So we're going to set up a skeleton of our piece. So I went ahead, so you guys didn't have to watch me do this. I went ahead and made some circles like my chess piece here. So I've created a chess piece, a wire for each time it changes direction here. So I've got one for the bottom, the next level up, and then where it turns and goes in, up underneath here, then one for the outside, then one for here, there, and then I'll create a spherical top size for the top. So I went ahead and, like I said, we'll need a pair of pliers to go along with this. So to create the circles, a little bit about bending wire. If you want a soft curve, you'll use your fingers. So you'll bend it with your fingers. So if I wanted a soft curve, I would just use my hands. If I want more of a close to a 90-degree turn, you can only get so sharp because of the metal. You would use a pair of pliers. So you can see that created a sharper turn. So when you have a sharp edge, you create that, and then to create the circles or a more flowing edge, you would use use your hands to make that curve. So the best way I found to work with the wire is to work with larger pieces, because smaller pieces will tend to slide and move around a bit. So I'm starting here on the bottom, and I wrapped it around and kind of twisted it. So what I'm going to do now is I'll go ahead. I'm going to use part of this twist to attach it to the next piece up. So I got to decide if this is the size of my circle, how big is this ledge? Is it that big? Do I need to make it bigger? I think it needs to be just a little bit bigger. Yeah, that looks good. So you can see I've created a little 90-degree angle here. I'm going to make that more of a 90-degree angle with my pliers. So the other thing about working with metal is it has memory, and it also work hardens. And that means as you bend it, the more you bend it, the less pliable it becomes. And at some point, what happens if you bend it too sharply, it ends up breaking. So you're weakening the metal the more you bend it, but you're also making it less pliable, so it will have more structure. So it's kind of a push-pull type thing. And I'm going to, that's about the height I want it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my pliers and I'm going to bend that over. So I'm just giving myself a place to start. And I can use a ruler since I want this to be even. There's a little bit of play with it, so it's going to be about 2 inches. So I'm going to, with this wire, I'm going to do the same thing. Use part of this wire to start the connection between my first level and my second level. I'm going to need a lot more than just these two. And it's 2 inches. So I can bend it at my 2 inches. Then I'm going to actually use this. That doesn't look quite right. To help connect it to the next piece down. So I bent that over and I'm going to squeeze that shut. This is just going to hold it a little bit. It's going to need more structure than this. Each time you make a connection to another wire, or even the wire connects back to itself, it creates more structure. So starting to get a little bit of, and that's, if I try to wrap that with paper, it's not going to be very stable. So I'm going to go back here in a moment and start adding wires that go from the bottom all the way to the top of it. So here, so I can, no, I guess not. We'll just leave it there. And I left this wire sticking up here because I'm going to use it to connect to the next layer up, which is going to be one of these. And I did not make these long enough to connect back, so I'm going to have to I'm going to want to try to keep this centered best I can. Once you get it kind of together, it's going to, you can kind of bend it around and move it a little bit more. So to create some more structure, I'm going to wrap here. All right, so I'm going to need more structure on keeping this up. Give me one moment here. I'm going to try to block this sun off a little bit so it's a little bit less blinding. There we go. That's much better. There we go. Sorry about that. So I'm going to take a longer piece and I'm going to start at the bottom. I'll give it a little bit of a wrap around or two. I want to try to end the wire pointing in, because if it's pointing up or out, you're probably going to end up poking yourself. And you may end up bleeding. So I'm starting to get the structure down. This is a little bit tighter of a turn. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start using my binding wire. So it's about, it's the 28 gauge and it's about an inch to 2 inches long. And I'm going to kind of figure eight it around my wire here. You can think of your binding wire as if you were working larger with steel rod, as the place where you would add a weld or a braze, depending on the material. And so I brought it to the next. I've cut a bunch of the little wire over here just to save some time in the video. Well, fingers aren't. You want to try to make these as neat as possible. Once again, trying to end the wires on the inside as opposed to the outside, because they'll poke through the paper. I'm actually going to add another one. I'm trying to give it a bit more support by tucking it underneath this wire. You can see. So it took me a wire to get it bound onto it, and then we'll bind it in here perhaps to give it more stability. Then you can go in and give it a little squeeze, your binding wires. Then I'm going to continue on up. So this actually comes back out, so I need to bend this pretty severely, like so. And then get Yeah, comes out to this one. So I probably have enough wire here to attach this one. Straighten it out and making it work right. And then I can also measure that. It's about 1.5 inches. So I can bring this one out 1.5 inches. And at first it's going to be a little floppy. Until you get more wire on it, more connections made. In fact, I think what I'll do here is give it a little loop around, give it a little bit more stability. So I pulled the bigger wire around. You can see how that kind of stabilized it a little bit. Then I can give that a little pinch. And then I have a smaller one here. And we'll do the same thing. It's probably going to be do another 1.5 inches. I loop it around. And that goes up. And I have enough extra on this loop that I'm going to bring it down here and hook it in. Oh no. I think my wire just broke. It did. That happens. All right, so I've got up to about right there so far. Now I'll bring it up to the next level, which I've already got started here. I need to figure out how tall that is. Oh, this is getting way taller than I really wanted it to. shrink some of this down a little bit. Yes. Do that in a moment. So this comes up to here. We'll loop this around. And I think I'll make that the size of the sphere. So I'm working towards it. It's getting a lot taller than I thought. So what I can do about that, since I've already got these connected in, I could kind of bend these a little bit and make them more curved. I think I need to get it together a little bit more before I start that mess. So I'll need another piece of this wire. So your pliers, your needle nose pliers, have cutters down here near the near the connection. So you put it down there and you give it a snip, give it a squeeze. And then I'm going to start back down here at the bottom and work my way back to the top. I'm actually going to go across the bottom this time. Give it a little bit more. So this connection right here was coming loose. So I'm going to take a little piece of binding wire and bind it to where it doesn't want to move anymore. And I'm going to give it a little twist around here. Now this wire is probably going to add a bunch of support It's much needed at this point. I'm wrapping it around. And then I'll go back with the binding wire and bind it and keep it in place. Working on shrinking it down a little bit. Make sure those are basically the same length. Then create my, oops, sorry. For this first one, I'm gonna create a loop and then I'll use binding wire from here on. Oh, that's not a good idea. Leave it a little bit more open by not binding it there yet. All right, so my piece is getting this gangster lean. So we'll kind of bend it back in place and force it to do what I want it to do. Just wire. And if you find connections, like I just had this part come undone, get a little piece of binding wire and bind it so it doesn't do it again. We'll go back and add more of these to add more structure as we get a little bit more solid work going on here. So I'm going to add another, kind of keep adding more and more structure, and as it starts to come together more, we can bend and make it do more what I want it to. Still really tall. So as you're working, you want to consider, like, from all sides, especially if it's not a piece like this where it's symmetrical. So like if you're working on a stuffy or something that's a little bit more organic in nature, you need to kind of consider from multiple angles, multiple sides, the shapes that you'll be making, or the volumes that you'll be making, I should say. I'll start this one here. Let's start it here. And we'll start on this one. Give it a little couple twists around. Grab a binding wire, just to keep it in place. It'll probably still slide a little bit, but this way it doesn't come off the wire and make your life more challenging. So I'm wrapping it around. I want a nice crisp corner. Give that a squeeze down. Wrap it around here. So if on this project, if you want to use a particular object, a toy or what have you, or a figurine, you have to have it in class. You are not going to be working from photographs. You need the actual piece in front of you so you can see all sides of it and copy it from multiple directions. I got really close to that. So you don't really need to create structure on the inside as much as on the outside. So this kind of construction is kind of useful. It helps you understand the forms that you're dealing with, but it also can be very, very strong and allow you to build bigger objects and make them lighter. One of the biggest thing that humans make is our buildings, our architecture. And skyscrapers are made using a skeletal form, and that's basically what you're doing, is making the skeleton to put the exterior on. Cars have frames. We have a skeleton. Without it, things would be a lot different. Sorry. So I'm going to kind of sculpt the or shape the spherical top later. I just want to give myself enough wire to work. I'll create ribs going around to help with that, and also the cylinder or the cone here in the middle. I'll do the same with it. So to add more structure, we'll start adding some more of this. I need probably another wire or two on this side, but video is getting a little long, so I'll show you guys kind of how to add these a little bit better. So anywhere there's a connection that could come apart, we're going to add just a little bit of wire wrapping. Try to make it neat and concise. Even though it's going on the inside, the neatness will come through on the outside. So that keeps it from sliding and kind of disconnecting. Oh, that's what that was. A loose piece of wire that broke off here. Still somewhat connected with binding wire, so we'll just leave it in place and try to secure it down to help give some structure. So as you're working, you want to kind of consider what the planar form is looking like, so how it's going to look after it has something laid on top of it. You can do that by perhaps laying a cloth on it. Like we look at the top here, it's not very neatly done and definitely doesn't have the structure it needs quite yet. But I could lay this washcloth, a thinner cloth would probably work better, but this just happened to be handy. And you can see that it's not looking spherical, so I need to add probably another one here, and then add perhaps a couple circles to the top. And same here, I probably need to add a couple circles in here. And I also wanted to shrink it down some, so what I'm going to do to shrink it down is, instead of having these lines go straight across, I'm just going to put a little bend in them. And that will help support the paper too. And I can also adjust side to side, since I'm trying to have that centered a little bit better. Then I can do the same here to make the sides work a little bit better. And I have a disconnect down here where the wire actually broke on me. So I'm going to need to kind of loop that back. I'm going to give it a squeeze where I want it to stay. All right, so that's it for this video. I'll work on it some more off camera, and then start showing you guys about covering it with paper.